talking to Alana McLaughlin, and she's giving us some information relative to the literature and other aspects of the Harlem Renaissance. And she has agreed to talk about some of the other movers and shakers of the Renaissance during the final period that we have here. As a matter of fact, Lana, we've tried to give you as free a rein as possible to talk about some of the many aspects, it appears, that you've gathered dealing this Harlem Renaissance movement.
Now, before we get into, say, the name changing of African Americans, there's another big aspect of the new Negro movement, well, the Harlem Renaissance. James Weldon Johnson. Now, when you think of James Weldon Johnson, most people don't know who James Weldon Johnson was, why he's important, what he did. He wrote the Negro American national anthem, which is "Lift Every Voice and Sing." Now, I'm sure people saying that has nothing to do with the Harlem Renaissance. That was a big part of the Harlem Renaissance, because let's see, it was the coming together of African Americans. I mean, because they knew they were getting popular and moving on up. I mean, they had their own anthem, they had books, they were famous writers, famous musicians, famous jazz bands. They were moving up, and they wanted to bond together to make sure that African Americans got their name out there, that they weren't just former slaves, they weren't just to a random person, that they weren't just former slaves, that they weren't just workers, they weren't just cotton pickers, they were something important. And that's why all African Americans, maybe some are more important than others, and maybe some got more fame than others, but all of them were very important. Now, if you had a whole band of famous African Americans and you plucked one out of the group, then it wouldn't really make the Harlem Renaissance, because it was about bonding together. And if it didn't have anything to do with all African Americans, if it was just an elite group of African Americans, then it wouldn't be the New Negro movement, because that's when we came together and we were all individuals at that time. Then it wouldn't make a movement, because you can, but they bonded together to make a movement, a big movement. I mean, because one person probably wouldn't make that big of a movement. They had to bond. And that's what made the New Negro movement. And so they bonded over this song. That was their empowerment song, "Lift Every Voice and Sing." In the title it says, "Lift Every Voice," which is get your voice out there, get your boom on. That's what that really meant. And so so that's why I want to emphasize the importance of James Weldon Johnson's song. Now let's go back in time a little bit to describe what basically brought upon the name change African Americans from color to what?
New Negro.
Negroes. So at first, they started out as slaves. Then they became colored people. Then they became Negroes, then Afro-Americans, and then African Americans, which is what we are today. And so those are some of the many names, and we were called much more than that. Some stuff I can't see on TV, but I mean, we were called much more than that. I mean, we were segregated. We were hated, beaten, killed because of the color of our skin. And so that brought upon a name change, because they said, well, I'm guessing somebody said, well, hey, let's be Negroes instead of being colored. I mean, because colored has no wow to it. I mean, being Negroes at least has some wow about it. I mean, just being colored just means, like, you could be pink, you could be red, you could be orange, but Negroes specified us. I mean, when you say colored, like if I went up to somebody and said, what are colored people, that would say, oh, they can be orange people or pink people or, hey, maybe even purple people. But when you say Negroes, you know exactly who you're talking about. You're talking about me and you, African Americans, colored people. So they want to specify who they were. And over the years, they got more specific about it. I mean, slaves could be anybody. If you weren't white, then you could be a slave, like Native Americans, purple people, orange people, African Americans, black people. But then when you got colored, kind of narrowed it down. I mean, because if you said who was a colored person, I doubt that anybody would say a Caucasian person or a white person. But then when you got Negroes, then you knew exactly who you're talking about. And then when it got from Negroes to Afro-Americans, and you know exactly who they were talking about, even more specific. And then African Americans, just be an African American. There are African Americans. You can't just be alone being African American because you have to bond together to make an African American. And so that's what. There's some other events brought upon the name change, like. Nobody said, oh, let's change our name because we feel like changing the name. Stuff brought upon name change, like, say, like, since the Harlem Renaissance started in 1919, what are some stuff that happened before 1919? Like, in 1912, the Titanic sank. And other important events happened before 1919, and other important events happened after 1934, like the First World War. And other important stuff happened after the Harlem Renaissance, which ended in 1934. So, like, even this year, we have our first African-American president. And so those are some of the stuff that brought upon the name change. And I feel as if in the future, we might change our name once again, and then again. And again, you don't know how many times we can change our name. But that's just some of the stuff that brought upon the great name change.
And this is your information in reference to the Harlem Renaissance, and you think that young people like yourself should be much more aware of the significance of all of these things that you're talking about.
Everybody should be aware of it, not just African Americans or colored people. I mean, everybody should be aware of it because no matter if you're black, white, pink, purple, it affected everybody. It didn't just affect African Americans. I mean, because if you went up to, like, I know there's not purple people in the world, but if you saw somebody that was purple and you asked them, do you think you were affected by the Harlem Renaissance? Yeah, because of the music they listen to today, or in band, the instruments they play, or if they're pianists, the piano that they play was all a part of the Harlem Renaissance. Like the Harlem Stride style, they were affected by this. Everybody was affected by it. It wasn't just African Americans, the African American community, it was everybody.
And do you see any relationship between the kind of music that was played during the Renaissance and the kind of music that you listen to today? Now,
say the trumpet, you can look up any Rachel Ferrell song, and I'm sure you will find even if you don't hear a little bit of trumpet in that. And she's a famous jazz singer. She had to be influenced by the Harlem Renaissance because that's when trumpets became famous. And if you look up, say a Beyonce song, I'm sure you can find a piano version of that. And what was that inspired by? The Harlem Renaissance.
And so the Harlem Renaissance has a much greater impact upon American history than
it didn't just start and stop. I mean, if you start something, you can't just end it when you feel like ending it. It goes on and on and on and on and on.
And such organizations like the NAACP and civil rights organizations and et cetera, all of those are in a real sense influenced
by the Harlem Renaissance, the new Negro movement. Because the NAACP, when you think of NAACP, you think of civil rights. They were much more than that. They helped in the Harlem Renaissance. Some of those famous people during the Harlem Renaissance were influenced by some of the people who in the NAACP, the music they listen to today, was influenced by what? The new Negro movement.
And Du Bois and all those individuals played a significant role in it. And you think that the more people learn about it, the more tolerant that they could be toward one another, and et cetera. And you're doing everything that you possibly can in order to try to spread the word.
And before we end off the show today, I just wanted to say a big thank you to Alan Leroy Locke, who basically inspired the New Negro movement and who was basically the cause of it. I mean, because of all his works in the African American community, and I want to thank him for that.
Now, where was he from now?
He was, I'm not sure actually.
But you know that he is one of the most significant aspects of the movement. And I say that primarily because when I first started college, I was also told that same idea, and I was wondering where in the world did you get that idea from? And certainly let me, during this last half a minute, Lana, thank you for bringing that excellent information by. And I think that when you first approached this topic, I think I was somewhat skeptical in reference to it, and I felt that I really ought not to deal with you in reference to this because it would be quite an embarrassment if you were not as good as you claim that you are. And I think that you demonstrated in a real sense that You gave us some excellent information. And let me encourage our audience to tune in again next week for another informative edition of Comments. Thank you and good morning.